Hello there and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is L24 Daily Special Coverage. I'm your host, Abdulrahman Kashua, and today's focus will be on Ukraine referendums and the Baltic gas leak. Kremlin says that the full region of Ukraine that held referendums on joining Russia will be incorporated into country on Friday. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that Russian President Vladimir Putin will attend a ceremony at the Kremlin during which the regions will be officially folded into Russia. Scientists on the other side fear methane erupting from the burst Nord Stream pipelines into the Baltic Sea could be one of the worst natural gas leaks ever and pose significant climate risk. To analyze all this information, I'm joined live by Mr. Oleksiy Yakubin, PhD in political science from Ukraine, and from Sweden, Mr. Gregory Simons, associate professor at the research at Uppsala University, and from Austria, via phone call, Mrs. Mikaela Obrasa-Ornak, European and Economic Affairs Policy Expert. Gentlemen, lady, thank you so much for being with us in this discussion. A short break and we start our debate. And before we delve into discussion, let's tackle this report after the outward victory of the yes to the annexation of the 4 Ukrainian regions under the Russian control. The United Nations and the EU have made it clear that they will not recognize these pro-Russian referendums. Why? The president of Ukraine has called for an isolation of Kremlin of all international organizations.
Pro-Moscow authorities in occupied Luhansk claim that residents in the region voted to join Russia in referendums the US and Western allies have dismissed as illegitimate. According to Russian-styled election officials, 93% of the ballots cast in the Zaporozhye region supported annexation, as did 87% in Kherson region, 98% in the Luhansk region, and 99% in Donetsk.
The question is, are you in favor of joining Russia as territorial entity of Russian Federation? 1,636,300 participants of the referendum responded yes. 60,555 participants of the referendum responded no. The election has taken place.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky derided Kremlin-run referenda in occupied regions of Ukraine as a farce in his nightly video address on Tuesday.
Ukrainians, I have just taken part in a meeting of the UN Security Council. The crime of aggression against our state, the farce in the occupied territory, which the occupiers called referenda, the preparation of another attempt to annex Ukrainian territory.
The United States, in turn, said it will be tabling a resolution condemning the referendums being held in eastern Ukraine.
The United States will be tabling a resolution condemning the sham referenda being held in Ukrainian territory. We know the outcomes of these sham referenda were predetermined in Moscow.
The EU, for its part, has denounced the falsified results of the referendums and has considered it yet another violation of Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity.
There will be consequences for everyone who participates in these illegal, illegitimate referendums. But we do not want to comment on the process of preparing the sanctions list at this time.
The leaders of breakaway republics of Donetsk and Luhansk in eastern Ukraine are on their way to Moscow to formalize their annexation to Russia, following the referendums held in 4 territories controlled by Russian troops, in which most of the voters supported this option.
And derived from this report, I'll be starting with you, Mr. Oleksiy, since you are in Ukraine. The votes in the separatist region scores more than 95% in general to join Russia. If this really happened to be the case, now how Ukrainian government is going to deal with this referendum votes? The residents over there, they already choose to join Russia.
In my opinion, it's a quasi-jurisdictional cause for the annexion of the Ukrainian territory, because, in my opinion, it's not a real referendum, because what about the referendum in the situation of war? Yeah, no, it's not impossible, you know. Next aspect, it's population, yeah. Some people to join in this referendum. We did not know a real people to join to this referendum, a real amount of these people. And for my position, yeah, it's some quasi-referendum, quasi-judicial procedure for the annexion of the new Ukrainian territory. Ukrainian parliament adopt from some power parties to opposition, like Yuri Boyko, adopt a resolution that to call all the countries in the world did not recognize these results, because it's not a real results, yeah, because it's not a clear procedures on this process. You know, we did not know what under the rule of what country to organize this referendum. It's a Russian legislative law or Ukrainian law, because from the Ukrainian law, it did not impossible to organize this referendum.
Very good indeed. Coming to you, Mr. Simons, referendums in Donbass, Zaporozhye and Kherson regions reached the end point with the Russian upper hand. In other words, a victory for Moscow's cause. So how do you explain this latter? Does Russia have the legal right to hold this referendum, or this is another violation of international law by Putin, as the West is claiming?
Okay, well, I think you've got three broad aspects that influence this. One is the legal, one is the emotional, and the other one is the circumstantial. And so if we're looking at it purely in legal terms, and well, as has been mentioned by your previous speaker, I mean, it's an unclear legal process. But also the problem is that the West has been doing this. I mean, we look at what happened to Kosovo, we looked at what happened with regards to the Israeli annexation of parts of Golan Heights. So, I mean, that is a violation. I mean, so you got two wrongs, and of course two wrongs don't make a right. So this brings to the circumstantial. And yes, I mean, how do you conduct a free and fair referendum during a time of armed conflict? And that's highly problematic. But also, I mean, you've got the emotional part, which is also linked to the circumstantial, that the people from these regions, especially Lugansk and Donetsk, I mean, they've been getting shelled from the Ukrainian military since 2014. So, I mean, you had the initial event in 2014, the anti-terrorist operation, as Kiev called it, against those regions. So one can understand emotionally the sort of how this would prompt them to be more favorably predisposed towards joining Russia.
Very good indeed. Staying with you, Mr. Simons, Ukraine's advances last couple of weeks pose a question to the whole world. Can Kiev actually win? Some analysts now are confirming that it was only a strategic withdrawing by the Russians to annex territories without losing more men. And we can see now the referendums that has occurred.
Okay, yeah, I mean, they did not put up a fight. The Russian army did not defend solidly. As you say, it was a fighting withdrawal. And this is to trade territory for inflicting casualties on the Ukrainian army. And one should not see it as a victory. It's a success in Kharkiv. I mean, it was an absolute disaster with the different forces in Kherson. So this can also be seen that there's now a mobilization. So when you have an attack, there is often a counter-attack that follows. And given the general superiority in terms of firepower and so forth possessed by the Russian Federation over Ukraine, then it's likely something is to follow.
Very good indeed. Now let's tackle the second point in our discussion. The United States will impose more sanctions on Russia, including economic costs, in the coming days of its referendums in occupied areas of Ukraine. State Department spokesperson Ned Price said that U.S. will continue to work with allies and partners to bring even more Russia on Russia. So, waiting Ms. Mikhail to join. What is your comment on these sanctions, Mr. Alexei? Don't you think they should bring another way to aid Ukraine rather than keep the same policy? After all, they have failed to secure and free Ukraine with this policy.
You know, Ukraine want to call for the Western countries to reject this quasi-referendum and also to make a new sanctional package. It's 8 sanctional package. These sanctions about the people to joining to the organize this quasi-referendum and about some bank and energy sector. But, you know, in Kiev also thinking that about some second sanction for those countries of who now to help Russia avoid Western sanction, because now situation that some countries, for example Turkey, but not only this country, to avoid some Western countries, and that's why Russia in this new sanctional regime thinking that they have some ways to avoid Western sanction.
What is your words on this, Mr. Simons? Do you think that this policy of sanctions that was described as a suicidal policy will work with Russia right now? I believe they have lost doing this policy. Why they keep doing it?
Well, I mean, the saying is, if you keep doing the same thing and expect a different result, this is madness. But so this happens. And I mean, if one looks at the greater context, I mean, I think Mitch McConnell, the minority leader of the Senate, I mean, put it well, because what are the war aims of the United States? And as he said, I mean, he said, as long as we keep Ukraine armed and supported, they will fight to the last Ukrainian. This is not about Ukraine's victory. This is about Russia's defeat. And I mean, this has been echoed by Victoria Nuland. It's been echoed by Antony Blinken and Austin, the Defense Secretary. I mean, and one should also keep in mind that a large chunk of the world, I mean, it's counted at least 140 countries, do not support the United States-led sanctions on Russia. So this is very much a Western thing, the United States and its vassals. It's not about the wider world.
Quite understood. Now, to tackle the new topic, another gas leak, one discovered in the damaged Nord Stream pipeline, Sweden's Coast Guard says 2 of these 4 are in Sweden's exclusive economic zone.
Sweden's Coast Guard spotted a 4th gas leak on the damaged Nord Stream pipelines earlier this week. The 4th leak was discovered on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, not far from a bigger hole discovered on Nord Stream 1. The leakage reported on Thursday is the 2nd one found in Swedish waters, while 2 others were discovered in the Danish waters.
There are 2 emission sites in Sweden's exclusive economic zone. The bigger one above the Nord Stream 1 and a smaller one by Nord Stream 2. The distance between the 2 sites measured about 1.8 kilometers.
None of the pipelines was in operation when the suspected explosions occurred. However, both of them were packed with gas that has been gushing out and bubbling to the surface of the Baltic Sea since Monday. The European Union, who believes that sabotage was responsible for the gas leaks, has pledged a strong response to any deliberate interruption of its energy infrastructure.
Today we faced an act of sabotage. We don't know yet all the details of what happened, but we see clearly that this is an act of sabotage.
It remained unclear who might be behind the leaks on the Nord Stream pipelines that Russia and European partners spent billions of dollars building.
Before we talk about this gas leak, a setback to talk about with Ms. Michaela just has joined. Ms. Michaela, analysts describe the EU sanctions policies, the policy on Russia, as a suicidal policy, that they are viewed as a double-edged sword. The whole European continent is suffering from these sanctions. So why they impose another set of sanctions? Don't you think it's already enough?
Well, the sanctions are a political thing, and they are meant to be on a political level because the European Union stands with Ukraine. So the sanctions are a means to that. And of course, I mean, in economies that are intertwined, it does have repercussions afterwards. But still, as a political means, they're being upheld.
In your opinion, do you think that this sanctions policy will help Ukraine to gain its freedom from Russian troops?
Well, the sanctions are meant to be helping with leverage. And over time, I think they will have the effect that's intended. Yeah.
Quite understood. Now let's tackle this gas leak that happened yesterday. Mr. Simons, how can you explain this gas leak in the Stream pipeline? Is it a Russian move as that one of maintenance, or this is a real attack to worsen the situation more between the East and the West, or rather between Russia and the West?
Well, I think the first question that any rational person needs to ask, who benefits from destroying the pipeline? So if we start to unfold that and what's been happening lately, I mean, we can go back to earlier when Condoleezza Rice was talking about decreasing European reliance on what she called Russian energy platforms and increasing European reliance on American energy platforms. So this is the first point. Second point, okay, if Putin did this, I mean, this would be really stupid because it absolutely destroys his leverage. His leverage is maintained if the pipeline is operational. He can just turn off the flow and therefore maintain his leverage over Europe in the event. So that is gone. Russia does not benefit. Europe does not benefit. And if we look at more recent comments, and I think even Joseph Biden said, well, we're going to stop the Nord Stream pipeline. And so the reporter asked him, how are you going to do that? We have ways of doing that. Nuland has also echoed that. You had a Polish member of the European Parliament who afterwards said, thank you, USA, with a shot of the gas leaking to the surface. So, I mean, if you look at different analysts, Ray McGovern, Scott Ritter, and others, they're saying US is the most likely culprit behind this, although it can't be proven at this stage, but they are the ones who benefit the most from its destruction because now Russia has lost that leverage.
Very good indeed. A very good point you have raised. Ms. Michaela, if this war, the so-called special military operation, goes on for a longer period than it already has, will the energy crisis that crippled Europe's economy spread to other sectors and other fields, such as health and education and so on? And what damage this latest gas leak could add to the energy dilemma in Europe?
Well, of course, energy is a crucial sector. It's basically, I mean, that's why it's always protected and by the high stakes importance. And it could easily spread to other sectors, of course. since it's so crucial and so pivotal.
I believe I can't hear you even better. Now let's move to talk with Mr. Alexei. Mr. Alexei, European countries since the beginning of the war have been holding monthly meetings with no vision ahead for a better solution. They were only focused on how to aid Ukraine with weapons and imposing sanctions on Russia. But why they don't want Zelensky to have a peaceful talk to end the crisis? Why they keep escalating the war and pushing Russia to the limit? What is your words on this?
You know, it's not depends only from the Kiev, or maybe or European countries. It depends according to the real position of Russia. And now we see that real position of Russia, it's not a peaceful talking with Ukraine or some peaceful dialogue. It's some annexion of the new territory, a new annexion of the territory of Ukraine. Maybe it's some responsible about all the discussion about peaceful negotiate between Ukraine or Russia, between Western and Russia. In my opinion, now Russia did not want a real negotiate. They want some ultimatum to the Ukraine, to the Western, and that's why the only way, or maybe only decision from the Ukraine and from the West, it's militarize this process. Maybe Ukraine now need much more, from the West, financial, military aid, because Russia in this situation has much more arsenal of these instruments than Ukraine. But a situation that now, in my some clinch, because Ukraine did not, Ukraine president and another official persons talking about the peaceful position, but from the Russia, maybe it's some quasi, some quasi statements about this. It's not a real statement. Because maybe real statement, maybe we since if the Russia want real peaceful negotiate, maybe we seen this on the war position and so on.
Perfect. Mr. Simons, some analysts claim that the Russian military mobilization is not made for the Ukrainian cause, but rather to strengthen the army presence in the face of the 3,000 Western troops, NATO troops, in other words, gathered in Eastern Europe, near the Russian border. What are you saying on this?
I would not think that would be specifically for that. I mean, of course, this will be taken into account, but I think this is a reconfiguration of what is happening in Ukraine, because now there is a need to be able to reposition troops in those different sectors, especially those around Kharkiv, which have been getting put under a great deal of pressure. So this is more likely to be a repositioning to retake the initiative in the ground war in Ukraine, rather than addressing 3,000 troops, because you're going to do nothing with 3,000 troops against the Russian Federation.
Quite understood. Thank you so much for this explanation. Now, to tackle the last point, the Russian Security Council Deputy Chairman Dmitry Medvedev said on his Telegram channel on Tuesday that NATO alliance will not interfere if Russia uses nuclear weapons in response to Ukrainian aggression. He added that Kiev must realize this to some degree. The message said, let's imagine that Russia is forced to use its most formidable weapons against the Ukrainian regime, which has committed a large-scale act of aggression that is endangering the very existence of our state. I believe that NATO will not directly interfere in the conflict, even in this scenario. Ms. Mikhail, do you really believe that Russia can use its nuclear arsenal in Ukraine, as Medvedev stated? And to some extent, don't you think that the Western allies are pushing Moscow to the limits?
Thank you for the question. I actually think that we haven't seen the use of nuclear weapons on that scale, and I don't think that anybody involved now would want that. So it's in the best interest for everybody to refrain from using them. And as the world has progressed in general, with bans and treaties on nuclear weapons and their prohibition and the proliferation, I think that for the international community it would not make sense, and whoever uses nuclear weapons would not look like the good guy. So I don't think that any of the parties will be using them.
Quite understood. Mr. Alexei, you are in Ukraine, and kind of Ukraine is close to Russia. So do you think this is just a political discourse by Medvedev, or kind of this is a real threat?
You know, in Ukrainian, we have some fears about the use by the Russia, their nuclear arsenal, for example, maybe strategic or tactical nuclear bomb. Some Ukrainians fears about this because, you know, before the 24th February, we also, in that time, thinking that Russia did not want war with Ukraine, but now we see situation, yeah? And that's why in Ukrainian, to this statement of the, by the Medvedev, thinking seriously. But another position that may be some world stress on Russia, Western stress on Russia, influence on Russia, and the nuclear arsenal did not use. But, you know, Ukrainian government now ready to all situation and to create some algorithm for the people if the Russia will use their tactical, for example, nuclear bomb.
Very good indeed. Probably this is only political discourse. Mr. Simons, historically speaking, nuclear use occurred only a couple times in the WW2 by USA in Japan, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, as well as here in Algeria by the French colonialism. So, based on this, do you see another nuclear provocation as a threat, or this is merely a political, military discourse employed by the Russians?
Okay, I would hope that this is only a rather hard political discourse to try and stop this continual escalation. I mean, it's an extremely risky and dangerous game to go to this level. I would think that it would be unlikely that nuclear weapons would be used in Ukraine, even so-called tactical nuclear weapons. But this, of course, it sets a dangerous tone for further escalation. And, I mean, this makes the whole discourse by both sides a bit more unstable because there are certain lines being crossed, and it's hard to bring them back.
Very good indeed. And to this end, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end point of our discussion. Mr. Gregory Simons from Sweden, Mr. Alexei Yakubin from Ukraine, and Ms. Michaela from Austria. Thank you ever so much for taking part with us in this debate. Now, you can watch again this special coverage on L24 YouTube channel. And for now, take care of yourself. Bye-bye.